evening, Fred.
You have a quorum?
We do. We're it.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Pennichuck Water Special Committee. This meeting is being held on Wednesday, April 9th, 2025 at 7 p.m. in the automatic chamber. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance.
Alderman Clee. Alderman O'Brien.
Present?
Alderman Govea. Alderman Jettie. Alderman Moran is here. Alderman Wilshire.
I'm here.
You have 3 in attendance.
Very good. Also in attendance is John Boisvert, the Chief Executive Officer, Thomas J. Leonard, Director of Pennichuck Corporation, and
No, not Thomas Leonard, no.
No? Okay.
No.
No.
But Mr. Torres is here, yes.
Torres.
Okay, George Torres, Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer, okay.
And Don Ware.
Huh?
Don Ware.
And Don Ware. Don, I apologize.
No problem. I like being in the background.
As you know, unfortunately, I'm filling in for Trish Alderman Clay. And we wish her the best, personally right now. So, with that being said, going on, I'll open up the meeting to public comment. And we have Mr. Tebow. Thank you. Mr. Tebow, we follow the same rules. Can you give us your name and a 3-minute stop, please?
Well, I'm Fred Tebow, 24 Cheyenne. I don't think I need a minute more than 3 minutes. As Don Ware knows, I was over a decade ago, during the merger process, I was much involved personally in the acquisition of Pennichuck. In fact, I was an intervener, pretty active intervener, granted by the PUC. Now, I looked at the agenda yesterday's meeting, and I prepared these comments for yesterday. I noticed a number of Pennichuck communications from Mr. Bosberg. In particular, I noted a proxy statement that to vote for 4 individuals, and then, to my great surprise, I see listed in the item B in the proxy card, appoint Laurie Wilshire for a 3-year term. Now, I have a question. How does this proxy card get signed? What's the process after you've done your meeting here?
I think that goes to the mayor's office, and the mayor is actually the representative of this committee and the board.
Okay, so the board assigned the mayor to act on the behalf of the board.
But
Okay.
just the safety valve that you may be looking for is this particular committee.
So it does
And
not,
we make the recommendation to the
it
mayor.
does not come back to the full board?
I'm trying to remember, because there is a space, to be honest with you, Mr. Tebow, between these meetings and the board's meetings, because it's sporadic of it.
Okay, so I want you
Yeah.
to pay particular attention to what I'm going to say. I looked at this and I saw this Wilshire appointment. And I asked myself, how is this possible, given that the Pennichuck bylaws have a prohibition in the bylaws? I don't know if you read it recently.
Yeah, I read your communications.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
but let me go over to the record myself. There's a prohibition specifically against appointing elected officials, including the mayor
30 seconds.
and some other people, and appoint them. Prohibited, and there's good reasons for that. They didn't want to pollute the political process with running this unique corporation, this unique association, city being the sole shareholder. Now, I found out that the bylaws had been amended as of 1 March. They were not posted.
Time.
Well, I'm going to go on because it's important.
No,
I'll
you.
allow you a little bit, but,
Well,
express your thought.
there's nobody else here.
That doesn't matter, sir.
The rules are the rules.
As you are saying, you have rules, We have room.
Well, you can extend my speaking period. So, the amendments, in fact, were amended as of 1 March. They were not posted. I contacted Mr. Bosworth, and he posted them as of yesterday. I noticed in those minutes, it stated that the mayor could appoint somebody and the president of the board could appoint somebody. And then I noticed that the president of the board appointed herself, because it said Lori Wilshire, and she's the president of the board. So I questioned this, and I said, can I read the amendments? And I read the amendment, and I went back and forth with Bolton, Attorney Bolton, because I think the reference is very unclear. Whatever it is, there was, during the merger process, over a decade ago, there was a strict procedure for not allowing elected officials on the board, for very good reasons. Furthermore, in the PUC docket number DW23101, which is the one dealing with the recent merger of the 3 companies, it says that the Board of Aldermen must make the aldermanic appointment, not the president of the board.
Okay, Mr.
It certainly
Tebow, I
says
think
that.
we got your point, that you're questioning
So,
the
let me finish up.
Excuse me, listen to me, sir. This is my meeting, not yours. And I don't want to be rude to you, sir. But the thing is, I think we heard your concern or your complaint, which is you're questioning the legitimacy of the board president, Laurie Wilshire, and serving on the Pennichuck Committee. Am I correct?
For 2 reasons.
No. Is that your point that you're making here, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And for 2 reasons.
I'll tell you how we'll handle this, okay? For now, I can't do anything today. Your question, sir, will be brought to corporate counsel and let them make that determination, whether it is legal or not, okay? And that's the best I can do. No matter what you say, sir, that's the best I can do at this particular time. I hope you understand that and accept my goodwill to look into that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Tebow. Okay, nobody else for public comment, so we'll refer to communications.
Communications from John J. Bovair, Chief Executive Officer, Pennichuck Corporation's revised quarterly report to the sole shareholder for the quarter ended September 30th, 2024.
Okay, being no objection, I will accept the communication and place it on file. Also
From John J. Bovair, Chief Executive Officer and Chief Engineer of Pennichuck, notice of annual meeting of sole shareholder and proxy statement, proxy card, and annual report to sole shareholder. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to recommend that the sole shareholder of Pennichuck Corporation elect C. George Bauer, Amy Marie R. Corriveau, Brian H. Law, J. N. Lustig, John D. McGrath, and Laurie Wilshire to the Pennichuck Corporation Board of Directors as Class A directors, each for which a 3-year term and until their successors are elected and qualified, and to authorize the mayor to transmit by proxy card the vote of the sole shareholders to the Board of Directors of Pennichuck Corporation by roll call.
Very good. We heard the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman Moran is a yes. Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
You have 3 yeas. The motion passes.
Thank you, sir.
Next communication from John J. Bovair, Chief Executive Officer and Chief Engineer of Pennichuck. Pennichuck's audited consolidated financial statements for years ended December 31st, 2024 and December 31st, 2023.
Okay, there being no objection, I'll accept the communications and place them on file. Unfinished business,
None.
new business resolutions,
None.
New business ordinances?
None.
General discussion?
Do you want to ask them to come up and talk about?
Yeah, would members of the Penchuck, do you want to come up and, if you want to get involved? Inside, come in, have, I think we have an open seat for you.
Okay.
One or two, maybe. Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
Mike?
While they're getting seated, I want to let Mr. T-Boom know that this will come back before the full Board of Aldermen.
Okay. And did you hear that, Mr. T-Boom? Okay, the board president, I wasn't sure, but in her interpretation and what's actually going to happen, it will be brought back to the full board
One matter.
to be confirmed or denied by the full board.
Communication? Or by resolution?
I think by resolution, correct, Madam President?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look.
Yeah. You got some tough questions for us, and I think we'll have to discuss that with legal. But the point is, it will be discussed before the full board.
Okay, I'll take your word for that.
We'll try to make it so, sir. An honest engine, yeah. Okay, thank you, Mr. Tebow. Okay, I'll let you gentlemen open the discussion, if what you want to tell us about or anything, and
Well, thank you for having us. For the
Yes.
record, John Boisvert, the CEO of Pennichuck Corporation. With me is Don Ware, Chief Operating Officer, and George Torres, our Chief Financial Officer. Most of the materials that were submitted and accepted this evening, I'm going to really pass it on to George because a lot of them are financial data and information that George is working with. But let me start by saying it's been, a little over 15 months on as the Chief Executive Officer. It has been a very interesting ride and a very active. I can't believe how fast this went through with all, the time has passed and all of the work that's been done. And I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the work of many, many people over the last year to bring together the merger and the work that we've done to really put the company in a position to really move forward for decades now. Working with the Board of Aldermen, the Mayor's Office, City Council, the Public Utilities Commission, the Department of Energy staff, all of the attorneys and the towns that were involved with this. I won't say it was an easy effort, but it was an effort that was well worth it. And I think we learned, from my perspective, I learned a lot about people who, the folks that I knew by name, and the work going through this and the integrity and the upfront and willing to speak and talk. And some of my closest, the best memories that we had were standing there and talking to the constituents of Alderman Gavea at a meeting. I think I was getting lucky because I think they really wanted to be there to talk about taxes that night, but not necessarily a merger. But I think these are the interactions that I think we crave as a company, and we are here to serve our customers. The effort that the Pennichuck staff put in over the last year and a half to build, this structure, but also to maintain and operate and make our system and our company and the water utility better has been, phenomenal experience for me to watch. One of the things that I would like to bring, and I know that he is kind of quiet about this, but I'd like to thank the gentleman to my right, Don Ware, for many years of guidance and leadership within Pennichuck. Those of you have already heard Don's will be retiring this summer, and we certainly wish him all the best. And having been with the company at the tail end of the real eminent domain and moving through the transition to 2012, I do remember working on a lot of projects, but being in the engineering group in my office right next to Don, and working tirelessly at making this transition to who we are today work. We can't thank Don and our predecessor CEOs and other staff members enough. But having said that, I would like to just pass it along to George to be able to, maybe touch base a little bit on the highlights of our financials and where we go from here.
Sure. Thank you, John. Good evening. George Torres, CFO and Treasurer of Pennichuck. What I'd like to do is first maybe kind of go over the highlights of the annual shareholder report. The shareholder report is a culmination of the quarterly reports that we provide to this committee. The basic takeaway in the annual shareholder report is even though you saw a significant decrease in the operating loss and the pre-tax operating loss for us in 2024 in comparison to 2023, which you may remember in 2023 was an extremely wet year for us, which certainly rippled through the revenue line. What really impacted 2024, even though we saw material improvement in those revenues, as well as some certain material increases in our operating expenses, it really is driven, that net loss is driven by what's called a valuation allowance on our deferred taxes, which was a material adjustment, and it came out of audit on the tail end when working with our auditor, CBIZ. That valuation allowance was about a $5.1 million adjustment to the bottom line. It had no tax impact, it had no cash impact, I want to stress that. What it did was it was a write-down of deferred tax assets that Pennichuck had on its books. And basically what the audit team had surmised was that valuation of the deferred tax assets were too high. And the reason they were too high is because we have such an accumulation of what's called net operating losses that we wouldn't be able to use all those deferred tax assets. So it's basically, it's almost the same thing as you're looking at a piece of land and you're saying it's worth, X, and they're saying it's Y. It's basically what it is. So they said the valuation of those too high because you can't use those. Now, there's certain reasons why we can't use them. The majority of that was due to the change in the tax laws related to the TCJA, which is the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that was implemented at the end of 2017 during the first Trump administration. That had a material impact on the valuation of those deferred tax assets. So bottom line, as I stated earlier, even though we saw material improvement in our pre-tax operating loss, because of that valuation adjustment, you saw a material increase in the net loss of 23 over 24. So hopefully I made it as simple as I could for you. It's a very complicated topic. I know Lori was involved in some of our meetings where we kind of actually discussed this subject, but that's basically it in a nutshell. Everything else is representative of just the significant material expenditures we made in 2024. John and Don can walk you guys through that. We did see some material increases in our operating expenses. Really, those are centered around our purification costs. A lot of it is, which is kind of a hot topic now, the carbon filter media changeout and some of the purification costs that the company is dealing with right now, and will continue to deal with. And we're also seeing material increases in our G&A costs, our general administrative costs. We're seeing that in our health insurance costs, as well as in our general liability insurance. We're certainly not immune to those, as I'm sure many of you are dealing those in your own household and businesses, and we're no different. Outside of that, there's really, I'll open it up to any specific questions before I go through the audited financials, if you'd like.
Members of the committee, question?
Nope. Okay.
I do have one.
Sure.
Okay, we all watch the national news and see the tariff issues. I'm not going to get into the pro and con of it, but do you anticipate, I imagine you use a lot of chemicals in the purification process to make sure that you're giving us good potable water. You anticipate a rise and those particular type of products that you need for filtration?
So I will turn it over to a gentleman that's more than eminently qualified to answer that question. That'll be Mr. Don
I
Ware.
thought you wrote it.
So you mentioned treatment chemicals, and our primary coagulant used at the plant, which is ferric chloride, it has been for many, many years supplied by a Canadian firm. So, currently the annual cost of that ferric chloride is about $1.5 million out of about a $55 million expense budget. Where that goes, we don't know. The entity that we buy ferric from does produce some in the United States. There was actually an issue back a year or two ago, John, where there was a trucker strike or.
Trucker strike in Canada, which we ran low in, and
Yeah.
at a critical period, hence one of the reasons, I say one, because there were many reasons why we're upgrading our treatment plant in the coming 18 to 24 months.
But long story short is we do expect some impact, from the tariffs. There are many of the electronics that we use that we would purchase to help control and oversee the operations have components from all over the world. Variable frequency drives, they may be put together in the United States, but, the chips, the boards come from other places in the world. So, at this stage, I guess you hate to say it, but we gotta just sit back and wait and see what happens. But we do anticipate, an impact from that if they stick.
Good advice for us all, with the whole thing going on here. Nobody's got the crystal ball, but I'm hoping,
Now, we have decided, we have a series of water main replacement projects. I think the question was, I think they have teed up about 4 separate type projects of various sizes. And one of the things that we've definitely done is we're really probably at this point likely to really hold off on that 4th one just now to wait to see what happens with the other ones, because if our pipe prices and stuff start to come up, you may not have the bandwidth to complete those. So the engineering group is evaluating those as we come. We have one out that we'll be doing up in the Bartlett, I think it's Bartlett Ave area, that'll be starting soon. And then we've got a number of other projects throughout the city where we're looking at a lot of short streets that have small diameter main that we need to get out of the ground, because when the city wants to go repave them with a 30-ton roller, those old mains probably aren't going to survive. And about 6 months after that, guess what happens? Water starts bubbling out of the ground if we don't get in there and replace those. So we're going to be doing a pretty significant effort in coordination with what we call the lead and copper rule, because these are older lines that could have. We don't believe we have any lead service lines, but they are galvanized steel and they are brittle, and we want to get them out of the ground.
I think I know where they are.
Yeah.
And you're replacing them with a minimum of 4-inch now?
Yeah, minimum of 4, yeah. So if it's a small, just serves a couple homes, we stay with 4. We don't go any bigger than that because it doesn't make any sense, and then the
No.
water becomes stagnant. And that presents water quality issues. Generally, our minimum size is 8-inch. We do use some 6-inch in some areas. So a lot of 8-inch, 12-inch in the city that we've been working with.
Alderman O'Brien, as a former fire chief, one of our focuses is that the engineering team has developed a model of a hydraulic model of the entire distribution system. We overlay that with ISO's requirements, and so when they're replacing mains, they're looking at, what size main will allow us to meet the full ISO flow requirements based on the area and what ISO was looking at for flow. So that's all taken into consideration.
That is fantastic news for the people at home. The ISO is an independent insurance organization. They help to establish, help to establish the insurance rate for the city. So the fact that you're trying to comply to ISO standards could mean, I don't know how much, but it will keep the stability in the insurance rates for fire protection in the city. So outstanding. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I got one more. We've had a wet spring. Are we looking good for this?
Everything's full. I mean, what I will say, in some of our smaller systems that rely on wells, and particularly what are called bedrock wells, we're still seeing a little bit slow recovery because remember, we had a very dry fall. Most
we
of your
did.
recharge for those will occur in 2 periods of the year. One is after the growing season and before the frost hits the ground or it starts to freeze up, because the rainfall will actually make it into the soil then, not get taken up by the trees and vegetation, and makes it down to the groundwater table. And then, same thing, you come out of the spring, when the frost comes out of the ground, you get rainfalls and the like before the leaves start coming out on the trees. Once the vegetation kicks up, you get very, very little recharge to the groundwater table because the leaves are taking evapotranspiration. So, we were still lower than we wanted to be coming out of we would have liked to have been, but we, in conversations with the engineering group, one of our environmental scientists, Ashley Piper, who has been diligent at monitoring these, has seen, indicated that there's signs of encouragement and that we're starting to see a little bit of a recharge period now because the leaves aren't coming out on the tree. They will be soon.
Yeah,
We're all
okay.
looking forward to that, but, so not bad shape. The Merrimack River is the Merrimack River, Pennichuck Brook is Pennichuck Brook. So we're pretty happy right now.
Fairly good news. Thank you. Okay, moving along, since there's no more questions, public comment again?
I'll take the opportunity for 3 more minutes. I know what Attorney Holden will
Your
say,
name-
because he wrote to
Sorry,
me.
your name, I'm gonna restart the clock, but we got to do
Restart
your
the
name.
clock.
Yeah, you gotta do the name thing again.
Restart the clock,
Hold on 1 second.
Fred T. Boom, 24 Cheyenne.
There we go.
I know what legal will say, because Attorney Bolton wrote to me, he wrote to the board saying, there's an exception to the prohibition on elected officials serving on the board. That is an obscure paragraph, and I asked Mr. Bosler to look at that, because it's affecting the bylaws. And the question is, who's influencing the bylaws? And why is Pennichuck allowing the president of the board to make the appointment within the bylaws when the PUC order 23-101 specifically states that the Board of Aldermen must make that appointment. The mayor can make an appointment, and the Board of Aldermen. So I urge you to write a resolution so it's on the record consistent with PUC 101, PUC 23-101. And then why would Lori Wilshire nominate herself? She has no water experience, practically no management experience. If you look at the other 4 people nominated by the nominating committee of Pennichuck, they're very experienced people. Very experienced. And Lori Wilson has none of that experience. And then on top of that, in this committee, she makes a 3rd member of this committee and voted not to recuse herself. You could have had 2 members vote yes. She voted yes on her own nomination. That in a way is a violation of ethics rules that we have.
I seem to beg a different, not to argue with you, sir,
So
but
let me just,
is there a law that says in the general election you can't vote for yourself?
yeah, you could. This is not the general election, this is a proxy.
No,
card
it's,
appointment.
well, we'll follow the same rules. You can vote for yourself, in my opinion.
I don't think you can. There's another thing you check with the attorney.
Prove it otherwise, sir.
But in summary, I am concerned about lax oversight by this committee in not adhering specifically to New Hampshire PUC Order 23-101. You should be familiar with that order. I used to serve on this committee. I certainly were very much involved with bylaws. And I'm concerned about the city's legal advice
30 seconds.
in allowing national officials to serve on the Pennachuck Board contrary to previous prohibitions on elected officials. And also, the city's legal advice ignoring specifically the New Hampshire PUC order. I hope you take this up, and if it comes positively in a resolution, it should be a resolution, because the Board of Aldermen acts through a resolution. And the PUC tells you the Board of
That's
Aldermen
time.
can make this appointment, that should be through a resolution, not through communication that precedes, in fact, public comment. It should be a resolution so it can be commented on in the full board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tebow. Okay, remarks by the alderman?
Thank you guys for coming.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and Alderman Wilshire?
Looking for a motion to adjourn?
Yes,
Okay,
that's
I'll make
always
that
in
motion.
order.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'll declare the meeting closed at
7:31 PM.
7:31. Thank you.